Hey guys, Dr. Ben here, Functional Medicine Centers. Welcome. Hope you're having a great day so far today. Excited to talk to you guys today about ivermectin. And ivermectin, some of you may have heard of, some may not have. This is a drug that has been out for a long time, but has been in and out of the news as far as working with COVID and people using it in trials and some things like that. So I've gotten a lot of requests for reviewing research and giving an update on where we are with ivermectin and whether it's a good option for people. And there's some pros and cons, and unfortunately it's not 100% FDA, even emergency use approved for use with COVID. So here we go. Ivermectin, it's kind of interesting how we get to this point. Ivermectin is basically an anti-parasitic. So it's a dewormer basically for animals. It's used in the equine world a lot, and what we know is that in that world it does a really good job. Ivermectin's been used for years. It's been in the industry for over 40 years, FDA approved, and even the people that had originally, the researchers that originally developed it, they won a Nobel Prize for this. So it's been used, even used in the malaria world in humans, but now I have a patient that she runs a medical supply time getting that ivermectin for their animals, because a lot of people, not just in the United States but all over the world, are using it. One, because it's very, very cheap. We're talking pennies to be able to do a daily dose. So here we go. Let's jump into this. Welcome everybody. If you haven't already, go ahead and drop down below where you're watching from. Put any messages, any questions. I'll be using this also as kind of a question and answer as well for anything that we're seeing. Any questions that you have, I'll try to answer those throughout this process. So here's the deal with ivermectin. And originally where it kind of started from, they had used it in laboratory, and it showed in laboratory to inhibit the replication of this SARS-CoV-2, which is that COVID-19 virus, in cell culture. So it's shown in cell cultures. Hey Carol, good to see you in Westminster there. Hope you're doing well. It was shown to inhibit replication. Remember, viruses, we've talked about this a bunch in the past, viruses get into the cells, and that's the only place they can replicate is in the cells. They can't just replicate outside of the body or in our body, but just floating around. They have to actually get into the cells so that then they can replicate there. Hey Ken, good to see you. Ivermectin, you can actually get ivermectin on Amazon. So pretty amazing that it's very readily available out there. But again, it is at this point. So where are we, and where did this come from? Well, it inhibits the replication of that SARS-CoV-2 virus in cell cultures. And what we know then is that there's a good chance that it might do that in the human body. So then they started, even way back in March, April, May, they started doing a lot of these. Haiti, good to see you there, and in Fort Bruno. So good thing is that they started doing a lot of these trials, even when COVID was really going through in that original time, that March, April, May time frame. And some of the different studies and trials that they were doing really showed a lot of even preventative, but also treatment for these. So one study they looked at in Florida, they looked at 4 different hospitals, and they gave 1 dose of ivermectin on day 1 and then day 7 if needed. So if somebody was still having problems, they would give them that ivermectin on day 7 as well. What was interesting with this one is that the vast majority, over 90% in the ivermectin group and the non-ivermectin group, were given hydroxychloroquine. So at the time, that was basically standard of care. They were giving almost everybody hydroxychloroquine as well. So they were giving ivermectin to half the group, and the other half were just getting the standard of care, which was hydroxychloroquine and some different things. And what they found was that the mortality rate was significantly lower in the group that took the ivermectin with the hydroxychloroquine than just the hydroxychloroquine and doxycycline. So that was one study, and that was a retrospective. So they didn't divide that out and track them during the time. They looked back at that study. So that's what retrospective means. So there was an Egyptian study that they gave people just PPE in the hospital setting, and then the other group they gave the PPE and ivermectin, and they found that only 2% of the people that were giving that the protective equipment and ivermectin actually got COVID, where 10% of the people that just had the protective were able to get COVID at that point. So it was 2% versus 10% of the people in those different groups, ivermectin versus not. So that was an Egyptian study. Another trial, they looked at 400 patients and divided them up into different groups. They had mild and moderate cases of COVID, and they had severe cases of COVID, and then did the ones that actually got ivermectin versus did not get ivermectin. And in the mild or moderate, 1% of the people in the mild and moderate group died. So they had significant versus 22%. So it was 1% of the people died with ivermectin, 22% of the people died without ivermectin. And this group was doing hydroxychloroquine as well. In the severe group, it was 2% versus 20%. So, a pretty significant difference. Everybody was using hydroxychloroquine in that study, but to add ivermectin into that was a significant difference in the mortality rate in there. So another study, another one in Bangladesh, it showed a significant decrease in the length of that viral load. Hey Ken, we'll get to that in a minute here. He's asking about how do you find out how much to use and some things like that. So this study in Bangladesh, where it's a very, very poor country, and they're like, man, if we could do something that's not like some of these drugs they've come out with that are thousands of dollars a dosage and don't really show a lot of change, just maybe somebody's out of the hospital a couple days earlier, but no major difference in mortality or severity, things like that. So this study in Bangladesh, they showed a 5-day course of ivermectin decreased C-reactive protein considerably by day 7. And so C-reactive protein is one of the inflammatory markers, one of the very common signs of this inflammatory cascade, and that infection is still going on. And they also tracked the nucleic acid viral load, so looking at how much virus was still in the body at day 7 and day 14, and it was a significant drop in the amount of viral load in the people that were using ivermectin. And so obviously in a very poor country like Bangladesh, they were excited because ivermectin, 1, it's easy to get, 2, it's pennies on the dollar compared to some of these other drugs. So some of the studies that we were able to see was it has some preventative effect, it has some treatment value, and it's going to actually decrease the length of that viral load. So it's going to pull it back from being this intense viral load for as long as it can, because remember, the longer somebody's dealing with the virus, the more likely they are to have other side effects to that. So all of the studies are showing promising. I didn't see any that showed that it wasn't effective, but as of now, the FDA has not given it the emergency use approval, meaning just like they came out with the Pfizer vaccine, it's not FDA approved, it's FDA EUA approved, meaning that vaccine is emergency use approved, where there'll be years before it's truly FDA approved. Same thing here, but they haven't even given it that EUA approval, which is interesting because they've been doing studies on it since last spring, and even now we're into the fall, into the winter, and it's still, even I saw some articles in September where they're like, hey, a lot of good research coming out, but we're still waiting for that FDA EUA approval, and it's cheap and there's no side effects. And so, it's something that you may want to talk to your doctor about, and get their recommendation on. There's some questions on dosage and some of those things. I'm not going to get, since it's not FDA, even EUA approved, I'm not going to get into dosage, anything like that. Google's your friend on that one. But yeah, there's definitely some research showing that ivermectin is a really good in that petri dish, so in the lab, it's going to decrease that replication, but then also it's going to, a lot of studies that it can help prevent as well as treat. Hey, Tamara, it's interesting, as far as why things haven't been approved. I really don't know why ivermectin hasn't been approved. There's upwards of 40 different studies and trials that have been done, but they said they're still waiting for more information. When you look at the Pfizer study and looking at the vaccine FDA EUA approval they're saying 90% efficacy, but remember, 44,000 people were in that study, and they split them up into two groups. And when they got that official approval, Google's not your friend for anything, so you could check out some of the other ones, DuckDuckGo and some of the other search engines, but you get what I'm saying. So they divided that group, 44,000 people up. All right, PJ, signed by POTUS. So the thing with ivermectin, PJ, you do not need a prescription. So this is over the counter. You can jump on Amazon, any animal supply, vet supply store if around you. They probably have some there as well. So again, remember that Pfizer study, 44,000 people, they divided them up into 22,000 people per group, and they gave a placebo and they gave the vaccine, and they've tracked them, some of these people, since April. And so when they say 90% efficacy, they're talking about 98 people have gotten infected out of 44,000. My first thought there was, wow, that's a lot of people, and not very many people getting infected. And so what they found out of those two groups there, that 90% of the people that got infected were in the placebo group, and 10% were in the vaccine group. So that's where that 90% efficacy number came from for the vaccines. And we're talking 98 people total out of that whole group, and that's what we're basing this EUA approval off of. So one study, a very small percentage of those people in there, and we've approved that, but not some of these other things. So it is what it is right now. You can't make them do things, but you can educate yourself, and you can make sure that you're learning as much as feasibly possible and doing the things that need to be done. All of our patients are taking vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, and they're doing great. So make sure you're keeping on track with everything. Keep that immune system working as well as feasibly possible, and keep up the good work, guys. Ask any questions, but yeah, you've got to keep digging deeper. There's more answers out there for getting your body as strong as possible, and also some treatment and prevention that you may not have heard of. So keep your ears open, and let me know if you guys hear anything else, and I'll do some research and let you know about it as well. Make it a great day, guys.